Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for a slightly different type of video today in which I want to share with you a few of the small tweaks I'm making to tune up my daily routine as we approach the new year here in a few weeks. If you've been to the channel before, you probably know that my routine is very important to me. Not because it governs what I do every hour of every day, because I certainly do deviate as life requires, but because it provides me with a framework that I can rely on to help me achieve my goals. At a high level, those goals are to be able to enjoy my hobbyist work as an indie game developer alongside a full-time job as a software engineer, while maintaining great mental health and physical wellness, and of course being a great husband and dad to a certified bad boy golden doodle. Whenever we get close to New Year's, I get really excited about this kind of fresh start that we all get when January rolls around and how it can act as a pretty powerful catalyst for positive change in your life if that's something you're seeking for yourself. I have definitely identified some room for improvement when it comes to time management, focus, and mindfulness, to name a few, and that's what I want to share with you today. Not because I think these are changes you should make, but rather just to open up a dialogue and provide food for thought if you also enjoy thinking about this stuff and hitting the ground running in January. If you do, I genuinely like to hear down in the comments which habits and behaviors you're trying to tune up to help meet your goals in the new year. Alright, we'll jump right in with my biggest hitter for the new year, which is my scrolling habit, or in other words, mindlessly scrolling content delivery apps like Instagram, Twitter, or X, etc. randomly throughout the day. I don't think I actually realized how much of a problem this had become for me until recently because of how slowly it had built up over time. What started pretty innocently as scrolling YouTube while I ate lunch turned drastically somehow into pulling out my phone and opening Instagram without even thinking about it for the 5 or so minutes it takes in the morning to heat up water for coffee. I've recently done a few very intentional and difficult zero scroll days to help me understand this habit, and I've frankly been appalled by how often I'd catch myself reaching for a content feed instead of allowing myself to be bored or just present for a few minutes. So this has to stop, right? I want to reclaim every second that I'm spending wasting mindlessly scrolling those content feeds. Over time, that will turn into seconds, minutes, and days of time that's instead spent being present with family, enjoying my actual hobbies, and working towards my goals. On top of that, I want to get rid of these quick, mindless dopamine hits that have desensitized me to the little things that I used to enjoy in those quiet, boring moments. At some point, popping YouTube open and watching random shorts became a far more enjoyable activity to my brain than just sitting on the front porch enjoying a cup of coffee. Time for a detox. Thankfully, I have a plan to fix this, and it's pretty simple. Eliminate access to the content feeds that I don't need at all, and introduce friction to access those that I do still need in some capacity. As an example, Instagram should be very easy and probably will be the first to go. I never post anything on Instagram at all. I just scroll, so I am removing it completely from my phone. I just don't need it. Twitter, or X, is a bit different. I do post on Twitter when I release new videos, make exciting progress on my projects, or just to chat with fellow game developers. I'm totally fine with these interactions. What I want to get rid of is mindlessly opening the app to scroll random content completely unrelated to game development. My plan here is to add friction when I open up the app to help me be mindful of how I'm about to use it. I have a great solution for this both for my phone and computer that I'm going to share with you, but because I am an iOS developer by trade, I am deeply entrenched in the Apple ecosystem, and that's what these solutions are going to apply to. If you use different platforms and you can think of similar solutions that you've used in the past, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love for this to be a resource to other people trying to make this same change. Okay, for the browser on my computer, which in my case is Safari, I found a great, simple extension called OneSec. All this extension does is let me add a few websites to a list, and when I try to navigate to one of those websites, I'm prompted to take a deep breath over the course of 5 or so seconds. Following that deep breath, I have to confirm that I want to actually navigate to that site. This is a perfect solution for me. It gives me the friction I need to kind of catch myself in those almost subconscious moments where I'm opening up a website for no particular reason, but it still gives me the option to proceed if I actually was going to go make a post about my game or talk to someone. For the apps on my iPhone, I've been able to achieve the same thing using Apple shortcuts, and I'll show you an example here. Instead of having the actual apps for Twitter, YouTube, etc. on my home screen, I have a simple shortcut for each that will open those respective apps for me, but only after I wait 5 seconds and confirm that I actually want to open those apps. Just like the browser extension, it gives me an opportunity to catch myself and snap out of it if I don't have a reason to be visiting that feed. Alright, next up on my list of tweaks, and still within the realm of productivity, is a technique to improve my time management while I'm working on a project. As you may know, if you've watched any of the devlogs on my channel here, I get most of my work done on personal projects between roughly 5:30 and 7 a.m. every day, at which point I work out, walk the dog, get ready for work, all that stuff. Where I've identified room for improvement here is how exactly I structure that hour and a half of focus time in the morning. In many cases, that's actually a very productive 90 minutes for me. On the best days, I'll sit down, know what I'm working on, and get into really deep focus for that whole chunk of time. That said, there are also plenty of days where this breaks down on me. By far, the most frustrating challenge I face with this schedule is being right in the middle of development of an important feature or debugging something frustrating when 7 a.m. rolls around. And because of all the other stuff I have to do, I have to just drop it and not touch it until later in the day. This results in me thinking about it all day instead of being present for the next task on my list. The other big challenge I face is dividing that time up between development work and what I'll just call YouTube stuff. Responding to emails, comments, chatting on Discord, and actually working on videos or scripts. Sometimes, on a morning when I know I need to do both, I'll do one for way longer than I intend to, not leave enough time for my next task, and just fizzle out and end up wasting the latter portion of my morning. I think I can solve, or at least improve, both of these challenges by implementing a technique known as the Pomodoro method. And if you haven't heard of that before, basically it's a way to structure long periods of work by breaking them down into shorter sections of active work separated by small breaks. As an example, the most common way you could set up a single Pomodoro is to set a timer for a 25-minute working session followed by a 5-minute break. The idea is that you string these together to stretch out across hours of work, study, or any kind of focus that you want to accomplish. I see a few potential benefits here, the first of which is forcing myself to break my tasks down into chunks that can be accomplished during those 25-minute working sessions. This should help me avoid a situation where I've accidentally scoped in a 2.5-hour task for my 1.5-hour morning. The other big benefit here for me is those mandatory 5-minute breaks. I expect these will help me context switch much easier between YouTube and game development workflows, while also giving me a structured window to stretch my legs and refill my drink. My plan for now is to implement this using the Forest app on my iPad, which sits here next to my working station. This is just a fun little app that kind of gamifies the Pomodoro method by planting little trees when I complete individual Pomodoros. In the future, I actually have an idea for a Pomodoro app that I'd like to make, so maybe I'll share more about that soon. At the end of the day, this is a very simple technique to apply and just try out, and I hope it does make an impact on how I spend some of the most productive hours of my day. Alright, the final tweaks to my routine that I want to tackle in the new year represent more of a return to previous good habits that have fallen off rather than introducing new ones. And instead of focusing on productivity, these are more aligned with my goals of physical and mental wellness. First off, I want to reintroduce the Wim Hof method to my morning routine. You may have heard me talk about this on the channel before, but the basics of the Wim Hof method, or at least how I implement it, revolve around at least one daily session of a pretty intense deep breathing practice as well as daily cold exposure. I have been practicing the Wim Hof method for years at this point, but very on and off. As of the recording of this video, my practice has devolved into the occasional breathing session when I feel like I need it, which is far from every day at this point, and about 30 seconds of ice cold water at the end of every shower, which I guess I'm happy I've at least stuck with that. Apart from getting back to a full 2 minutes of cold exposure per day, I want to be intentional about making time for the breathing sessions. Much like the cold exposure, those breathing sessions are not always super enjoyable for me. They take up a lot of time and require a lot of focus. That said, also like the cold showers, I feel like $1,000,000 afterwards. And this is going to sound sales pitchy, which I don't mean for it to, but I really do feel far more awake, far more focused, and genuinely excited to jump into my day after I finish up one of these sessions. The question is, where can I stack this into my morning routine so that I consistently make time for it and can effectively turn it into a habit? I hope that answer will come from the last wellness tweak that I want to make to my routine and talk to you about today, which is delaying my caffeine intake in the morning. Now again, from my devlogs, you probably know that coffee is a part of my routine that I very much enjoy. Currently, I brew a cup of black coffee pretty much right after I brush my teeth and go downstairs in the morning around 5:15. At 5:30, I sit down with that coffee to get started with my day. This has always worked pretty well for me, but again, I do think there's room for improvement here. And the driving force behind that was my recent discovery of Andrew Huberman's kind of recommended morning routine. I won't talk about that all here because he makes great content about it. So many other creators make great content about it. You should definitely check it out if you're interested in it. But I do want to mention this one simple change I want to make. The part of this routine that stuck out to me involves delaying caffeine intake until at least 90 minutes after you've woken up. And again, I'll let Dr. Huberman explain the science, but the gist of it is that when you wake up, your body kicks off its own natural processes to help support your natural circadian rhythm and get you charged up for the day. Ingesting caffeine immediately after rising during the kickoff of those processes can disrupt their efficacy. Instead, by delaying your caffeine intake, you can let your body's natural release of cortisol and other hormones do their job unimpeded. And as a result, you can even be less likely to experience the caffeine crash later in the day. Now, this is all well and good by itself, but there is an even further benefit that I'll experience with my personal routine. By delaying coffee intake until later in the morning, I won't need to devote time to making it first thing. That will give me a nice little window to slot in my breathing practice instead before I get to work. In addition, instead of sitting down at my desk with a cup of coffee, I'll be sitting down with a bottle of water. I expect this to vastly improve my hydration as I head into my workout at 7 o'clock and the rest of the day. Overall, a very small change with a lot of potential benefit. So those are all of the most notable changes I'll be making to my routine as I enter 2024. And as we wrap up this video, I want to leave you with one parting bit of advice. In the past, I have fallen victim to the idea that the new year is a great time to just overhaul my routine. I mean, wake up 2 hours earlier, start a new workout routine, change my diet, and start a new personal project. If you want to set yourself up for success, I recommend not overhauling, but making small incremental tweaks that celebrate the success you already see with your current routine. I think lifting weights actually makes for a good analogy here. In the gym, novel stimulus is what makes your muscles sore. If I introduce too many new exercises with too heavy a weight all at once, I'm going to be too sore to work out the next day. If I want to make a change while remaining consistent, maybe I'll just focus on new exercises for one muscle group or on one day of my routine so that I can remain fresh and on track with my goals. I'm doing my best to take my own advice with everything we talked about in this video. It may have seemed like a long list of changes, but all it really is making it harder for me to access social media on my devices, setting timers to improve my time management during working sessions, moving coffee intake until later in the morning, and introducing some time for mindfulness and breathing right after I wake up. These are all small kind of incremental changes that complement what already works well for me and will hopefully make it even better. I hope this has given you some good food for thought as you approach the new year. I appreciate you sticking around and hope you'll join me again in the future for more videos like this. Be safe, y'all, and have a great holiday.